Welcome to Leadership Lessons from the Fast Lane, brought to you by the Washington Speakers Bureau. In this space, we will explore some of the most pressing challenges that leaders face today with the world's most respected, innovative, curious, and accomplished thought leaders. We'd like to welcome our host, best-selling author and co-author of the recently published book, Choose Love, Not Fear, a WSB exclusive speaker for almost 30 years, Gary Heil.
Welcome to Leadership Lessons from the Fast Lane. I'm Gary Heil. Today's guest is Bill George. Bill is the past CEO and chairman of Medtronic Corporation and presently serves as a senior fellow at the Harvard Business School. Bill wrote one of the seminal books in management thinking in the last 2 decades, True North. And at the time of this taping, Bill had just released the Emerging Leaders Edition to his book, True North, in which he advocates for young leaders to create a different kind of world in the future than had been created in the past. For me, Bill has always been one of the most interesting thinkers. Bill is the values beacon for many of us over the last 2 decades, as he has constantly advocated for a world in where values really make a difference. And as he reminds us consistently, all organizations are essentially human, and in all human endeavors, values matter. Let's welcome Bill. The book is full of great examples of great leaders and some not so great leaders in the book. But I mean, we're in an interesting time, I think. I mean, last year, we had 20 million people quit their jobs in 1 year, right? In 1 month. I mean, what they call it, the Great Resignation, or now the people who kept their jobs, I guess, are called quiet quitting when they're becoming disengaged. But if you look at over the last 15 years or so, for this $16 billion a year we spend in leadership education, we've seen no real uptick in employee engagement. And in the last year, we've seen more and more employees saying, I'm reassessing this and it's not very engaging at work. That's directly related, isn't it, to the quality of leadership?
No one wants to spend their whole life, Gary, trying to help you become a billionaire or just helping the company earn $2.91 a share. People want to feel they make a difference. And that starts with people at Medtronic production lines. It starts with people working in retail stores, people working on airlines. Everyone wants to feel like they're helping other people. And I think what we've missed is we were on this metric for a long time, and your stock price is a measure of your worth. And I think that's changed now dramatically. But I think the reason people are leaving, and a lot of baby boomers get upset with the millennials are changing jobs. I said, there's a reason why they're changing, because you haven't created a clear purpose for your company and a clear set of values. And that's what people today want to do. When I got out of school, we just needed a job. I mean, we needed a job. We need to pay off our college debts. And but today it's not like that. There's 11 million jobs open. You can find a job at any level, from a person working in a retail store all the way up to a new CEO. So I think today it's our job as leaders to appeal to people and to align their purpose, their personal purpose, with the company's purpose. Because leadership is a challenging thing. And if you don't feel that alignment with the company and its values and its purpose, you're not going to flourish there. You're not going to do well, and eventually you'll leave. And that's there's been an acceleration of that now, Gary, because of COVID. People had a lot of time to reflect on, what am I going to do with my life? We've never had a period like this for 2.5 years where we're more or less working at home and pulled back from a normal life. And I think that's changed a lot of people's attitudes, and they're really reflecting. Some people are saying, I'll earn less in order to have the life I want to have. So I think it's our job as leaders to appeal, to bring them together around a common purpose and values, to get that alignment. And I think that's not soft, that's hard.
Yeah, and the purpose, it has to give me an opportunity to find some meaning in my life. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I'd heard a CEO stand up for the last 40 years and go, the purpose of the organization is shareholder value, I'd be a rich guy, but it's sort of bankrupt as an idea, right? I
tried to change it with the CEO of Honeywell back in the 80s, and we're going to put the customer first, and it didn't get anywhere. It became shareholder first. In fact, we all are familiar with the J&J credo. And of course, we know how Jim Burke used it during Tylenol, but it's very clear who you're there to serve. And I think we need to rethink why people work in business. See, I think, yeah, maybe a few people in the C-suite make a lot of money. Most of the people are out toiling away. They're working for a purpose. They want to save a life in healthcare. They want to come up with a product which makes people's lives better. It brings them joy, brings them happiness. That's what people get satisfaction over, to say, hey, I helped someone today in this bank. You know, you may think banking is a mercenary product. No, you're helping someone lead a full life. You're helping them get a mortgage so they can get the house they want, or you're helping them build up a wealth fund so they can retire, or so they can help send their kids to college. So each area, it's not just healthcare. There's so many areas where people want to make a difference. And I think leaders have missed the opportunity to really share that with people and get them engaged.
The purpose is so big. I do believe with you that, as you say, it's your words, that we need to touch people's hearts as well as their minds, and we touch their hearts through purpose, right? I think that's so true. I have to ask you though.
True, touch their hearts. That's the big change. You know, it's not just about being the smartest guy in the room. We have to develop leaders that are, yeah, they're smart enough. But I've studied over 100 leaders who failed. None of them failed because they weren't smart enough. They failed because they didn't have emotional intelligence. They didn't have self-awareness. They didn't have passion for the business. They didn't have, like you have, they didn't have compassion of the people they were working with. They didn't have courage to make a bold decision. They were kind of stuck in a managerial mode that went back to the 1980s.
Yeah, let's move back a second, because, you know, it's occurred to me for as long as we've been around that Doug McGregor at MIT years ago might have had it right when he said that, you know, our assumptions about people dictate how we lead. Is it possible that we think so little of others in some ways that we don't really look at human beings with the potential that they have, that we got into this command and control kind of, I have to control you because you're not like me? And we don't believe that ordinary people can be exceptional all the time. Is that belief in people at some of the root of why we lead the way we have in the past?
I think so. I was talking to the CEO of a company that has 250,000 employees. And I said, you know, there's two ways of looking at your employees. They're a cost or an asset. And if you look at them as a cost, then you just want to minimize the cost to your employees. If you look at them as an asset, they're the most valuable things you have. And I said, you've got great brands, great products, but you know what? The value of this organization walks out the door every night when they go home. And so I think if we think of people are our greatest asset, not just say it, there are a lot of people that say it, it's kind of cliche, but if you really believe it, how are you going to ensure your people are flourishing? How are you going to ensure they have a sense of well-being? How are you going to ensure that they feel like, I've got an opportunity to make a difference here in my small way? It doesn't have to be huge, you know?
No, I totally get it. I heard a football coach put it pretty well a couple of weeks ago. He said, you can't have an extraordinary team with average relationships on the team.
Hey, that's great. I love it.
Yeah,
isn't that your team? Isn't that true of my team? Isn't that true of everyone you work with? You know,
exactly.
We build those authentic relationships. You know, why would, and you know, Gary, to me, that starts with, do I trust you? If I have to work for someone that I don't trust, man, I'm giving you the minimum. That's with this idea of quiet quitting, which I think is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. But if I trust you, okay, and I think you'll tell me the truth and you'll be transparent. You'll say, Bill, we got a problem here. I need your help to solve it. Hey, I'm all in, you know, but if you try to cover it up or you won't tell me and if I can't build that trust, or if I know you're not telling me the truth, then man, I'm kind of guarded. I'm going to do the minimum amount just to get by.
Yeah. Bill, do you think when we think about leadership in those ways in the relationship, do you think we've been, as the leadership thought process, have we been too hierarchical? I mean, we tend to think of leadership by position too much, I would think. What do you think?
100%. Totally hierarchical. No, create a flat team. I was with the CEO last week, company that's got 150,000 employees. And first thing he did is he got a job as a young age, early 40s. First thing he did, said we had 7 layers between myself and the first line person. And he said, I took out 4 layers, now we have 3. And that brought him much closer to people. It spread around. There's no reason you can't have 15, 20 direct reports. And you really depend much more on the frontline people. If you go back to COVID, who was it that got us through COVID? It was the front line. You know, we're all sitting on Zoom screens in our homes. And what do they, you know, the frontline people, they're delivering food to your home. They're stocking shelves at Targets. They're, you know, providing, you know, vital services. And my son's a surgeon. You know, he's not doing surgery from home, I can tell you. He's providing, you know, he's keeping you alive. And so all those people 60% of the workplace on the front line. They're the ones, and I think we need to upvalue the front line. We've been devalued. Can you imagine? Say you had a son or a grandson that's going to work just out of college, $7.25 an hour. I mean, give me a break. No one's living on $7.25 an hour. So yeah, I think we want to upvalue the work, the people on the front lines, and maybe we need fewer middle managers. I definitely think we need that, and maybe, you know.
It's really true, though, what you say, though, right? If we're overmanaged, if we have too many managers,
Yep.
it does prevent the front line from stepping up and leading, doesn't it?
Business schools have turned out millions of managers, and you're absolutely right. We're controlling everything they do. I was trained as an industrial engineer. I'm standing as an 18-year-old kid with a stopwatch, looking at a 50-year-old machine tool work and trying to tell him how to do his motions. How crazy is that? You know, it's totally flawed. You know, but you know, why are we not trusting people on the front line? If I want to know about quality of Medtronic, I didn't go to the chief quality officer. I didn't just get a report. I actually went down, sat in the cafeteria, I just walked up, said, do you mind if I sit with you? Tell me about the quality of the product. Oh, we got real problems, Mr. George. We can't, the equipment doesn't work. And so we're having real trouble turning out quality products. Hey, I got it. You know, they'll tell you, they care because they know that product's effective, someone could die.
Yeah, the closer you get, the more reality that you hear. I had a Marine tell me recently that the reason why the Marine Corps felt more empowered than the Navy is that it had half the number of officers. They said, we don't have so many officers, so we rely on our non-coms. And I wondered if that wasn't true. And the same with the quality movement. We had a larger span of controls in factories than we'd ever had, didn't we?
Yes, but many of the best leaders I've known came out of the military because they had to depend on their sergeant, and that sergeant got them through, and that became critical. But remember, these people are putting their lives on the line. You don't go to Afghanistan or Iraq and not realize your life on the line. If you're working on Wall Street running spreadsheets, it's just about money, you know, and a little bit of difference.
Right, and they rely on their teams, which I think leads us into another question, is that so much of business thinking has been revolved around the individual. Individual comp systems, individual performance appraisal, individual theory of motivation. But we work in teams. Almost nobody works as an individual anymore. And I wonder if we really understand the dynamic of teams.
Well, some of my colleagues at Harvard are studying it, but I can tell you the answer is no, because why are we compensating people as individuals then? Why don't we compensate the team? That's what the Japanese do, you know, and they believe very strongly they don't want that. And I think, you know, it is all about the team, but I think the most important thing is the leaders of those teams have to realize they have to make what I call the I to we journey. They have to go from thinking it's all about me and I got to get to be from this team to a bigger team to, I want to get promoted to director to vice president. No, you have to flip the switch and realize it's all about your team. And you really need to help them flourish and be successful. That's your only job. You're probably not even doing the work. They're probably the ones coming up with the ideas and doing the work. You're just coordinating the team. It's like being a great coach. You know, you never set foot on the field, but like a Mike Krzyzewski, a Duke basketball coach, but boy, he challenged his players to do their best, to reach their full potential. But then the team, they had to come together as a team. And if they couldn't, if you just had a group of stars that couldn't get along, they're going to fail.
It is. And you make a great point. And I first heard it from Bill Campbell when he was at Intuit, but you made the point, and I kind of circled it in your book about 17 times when you said, the organization might call you a manager, but only your team get to call you and tell you whether you're a leader or not. Words to that effect. And that really is about the team telling you whether you're really leading effectively, right?
So, Gary, I made a couple of mistakes in promotions at Medtronic. I learned the hard way that I set a rule for myself. I'm not going to promote anyone until I get feedback, 360 feedback from their team, their subordinates, and from their peers. And, you know, because the fact I'm impressed with someone, maybe they do nice PowerPoints, they present well. Now, I want to know how the team feels about them. And do they really care about them? And I think a leader today has to care about you. People don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. And if your manager doesn't care about you, you're not going to give them your all. You're certainly got to give them your heart.
I think that's been true as long as I can remember, that the number one reason people leave companies is bad leadership,
right?
Bad supervisors.
And why can't we get rid of them? Why do we want all these toxic leaders? I say to people, do you have toxic people, leaders in your company? They say, absolutely. So why do you tolerate that? Why do we go for that? Why don't we move them out? Because they can do a lot of damage to people.
It takes a lot of great leaders to create a great company and a great culture. It only takes a couple of bad ones to kill it, I think. So why don't we get rid of them, Bill?
I think the management, the top management, doesn't really understand what people are doing. They aren't getting that 360 feedback. They're looking at they're looking at their numbers. Well, maybe the numbers is a game. Maybe I played monkeying around with the numbers a little bit. Maybe I took advantage of what my people are doing. Maybe I look good in the short term and everything collapses. Maybe I made my numbers by cutting my R&D budget, my capital budget, the future off. I cut the future out, and and then the business, goes down the tubes.
Kind of crazy we can't do that, because it seems to me, and Bill, I don't know whether I'm right about this, you ran a huge company, but in doing culture audits in companies, it seems like everybody knows who the bad leaders are.
They do. Yeah, they'll tell you. They say, this person's a real jerk, Gary. Why can't we get them out? Well, they made their numbers. Yeah, right. They made them somebody else's expense. And then they say, well, maybe it wouldn't flourish. Well, we found in our studies at Harvard, when you take that bad leader out, all of a sudden the team does flourish and other people step forward. You've been suppressing all the talent on your team to take credit for what they did. My view is very simple. If we got a real problem, then I'll step forward and say, I'll take responsibility for that as a leader. But if things go well, let's say, let's give the team credit. Let's get them all up here and give them an award or recognition.
Yeah, I think that's right. You talk about Coach K. I mean, I was talking to him. I don't know that he's hit a jump shot since he played at Army. But he sure had a lot of guys who could shoot.
That's for sure. But no, I had one of his players, Matt Christensen, on my team, Clay Christensen's son, in my course, and he said there was never a practice or a game when Coach K wasn't in his face yelling at him, but challenge him, Matt, you can do a lot better than that. You're not bringing us your best game today. Look, remember what I told you about, this or that, and you're not doing it. So yeah, he was challenging. That's okay. So somebody used to say, oh, this is the soft side. No, this is hard. Aligning people and what we're talking about, challenging people to do their best and playing as a team. This is the hard side of leadership. And I guarantee if you do it, you'll win.
And Mike also said, it was his opinion too, much like you just said, that sometimes we're reticent as leaders these days in the world we live in to give direct feedback.
Yeah, that's a tragic thing. Or we do it in a very formal way. That's not the best feedback. Best feedback is to say it right on the spot. Can I make a suggestion? You could have handled that interaction with the customer a little differently. Just think about this. Make your suggestion right now. Give me that feedback. I love feedback. I never teach a class at Harvard Business School where I don't get a lot of feedback. Some of it's kind of painful, no matter how well I do. But I learn from that. That's where I really learn. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from critical feedback. You learn. Most of us don't see ourselves as others see us. That's been really hard for me. And so I've had to really work hard at understanding how am I being seen by people. Well, you look at their feedback and they'll tell you.
Yeah, self-awareness is difficult, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to be self-aware when you think what everybody's going to tell you is how wonderful you are.
Well, I think you always see leaders going down the tubes. They surround themselves with sycophants that tell them how great they are. You want to have truth tellers on your team who'll come in and say, Bill, that wasn't a good meeting. I said, I thought it went fine. No, it did not go well. And everyone's mad at you because you drove to what you wanted. You didn't listen to anyone else. Hey, thank you for the feedback. I'll go back and talk to some people. But I think that's really important that we have those people around our team. I had several people that try and come in and tell me that anytime they wanted to. And if you don't do that, the word gets around quickly. You just don't give them any feedback, and then you'll never know what's going on. The biggest problem leaders have today with that, all those layers we were talking about earlier, they don't know what's going on. They really don't know what's going on. It is almost absurd. How could the Boeing leaders not know what their engineers knew, that the 737 MAX was headed for a crash? I mean, how could they not know that? Because they weren't talking to their people. They weren't out there with them.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, to be honest, right? When it's hard as the CEO to hear sometimes, because a lot of people have a vested interest to keep you mushroomed, to keep you in the dark a little bit, right?
Alan Mulally, when he went to Ford, he had 23 people on his immediate staff He said, one person was getting me coffee, and another person was taking my coat to hang it up. Another person giving me my agenda for the. He said a week later they were all gone, and I had one assistant that came with me from Boeing, and I don't need all that. And the first thing he said was, "Hey Gary, let's go down and see. That's the Rouge plant, the greatest plant in the history of the audit. Let's go down and see it." "Oh no, Mr. Mullally, our employees don't go to the factories." He said, "We're going. Gary, come with me."
Well, you put in your book one of my favorite quotes of all time from Abe Lincoln. I think that goes something like, "If you want to test a man's character, give him power." Right?
Yeah.
I think the research would show that almost a third of the people that get power abuse it. And I remember Abe Maslow said that the only people who should have power are those that don't seek it. What happens in that? Because some of that comes from the approximately some third, call it a number, of leaders who get power and you couldn't tell who they're going to be, and all of a sudden they're knuckleheads.
Well, you just mentioned two people. My mentor was a man named Warren Bennis, and he adopted me as my mentor after I left Medtronic. In other words, learning how to teach, learning how to write. And he didn't actually write things for me, but he gave me a lot of tips. But his mentors were Abe Maslow and Doug McGrath. He knew both of them well. He worked with them intimately. And why did we lose sight of that? The theory X, theory Y, and all this, because we got caught up with it's all about shareholder value, and I am my stock price. I used to tell my students, if when your net worth becomes your self-worth, you're in trouble. And a lot of people do that. A lot of billionaires sitting around counting their money every night.
I had an immense amount of respect for Warren, and I wrote some stuff with him. And you quote Warren, and I've heard him say 1,000 times that there's something that happens in a leader's life, usually some sort of crisis, or did he call it a crucible, or he called it?
Mm-hmm. I adopted the word from him, I confess.
Yeah, and when I remember him telling me, and it seems to be mostly true, isn't it? That leaders, even when they start out, go through something in which they take stock of their life and realize that what they think is important isn't what really is important when it comes to leadership. Was Warren right about that in your mind?
Sure, he was, but he's also right about the crucibles that we had maybe in our first 18 years of our life. They may seem trivial today, but they become much more pronounced. Like I lost 7 elections in high school and college in a row before I realized I was not a leader because I hadn't built relationships. I thought leadership was building a resume, getting ahead, but so you got to learn those things. But sometimes it can be like my friend Dan Vasella, you have a childhood illness and you want to then become a doctor and you want to then run a company that saves lives. Or maybe your parents got divorced and you're really gun-shy. Maybe your father tried to dominate you and you feel really when you get a dominant boss, you just back away. It can be all these things until you've resolved those things and really look at them and understand, who am I in this situation? Can I be myself? Well, far too many people are looking for money, fame, and power. In other words, external recognition of any form. And that's a real trap. That's back to what Lincoln said. That's like power. And a lot of people, you can never get, money's your goal. You can never get enough. There's a Senate candidate just thought, he said, how many houses do you have? He said, I have 2. Actually, they checked, he had 10. But if you want, I don't know what he does with them all. But, if money's your goal, if power is your goal, if fame is your goal, you can never get enough.
Yeah, is it possible, you think? I mean, so when I looked at the book, Bill, and when I was thinking through the book, it occurred to me that by asking the questions in the book, I could almost create a way of thinking, forcing me without all the hard times to question myself as to why I'm doing things. So am I really doing this for fame or power? Am I really willing to be that person for others? Am I really willing to be somewhat selfless? Because the point in here is that to some extent, leadership is not about self, right?
Well, it's definitely not about self. So I say, in addition to, I think there's 2 things you need to do every day. Well, not every day. You need to get 360 feedback. You need to get feedback from your subordinates and your peers on a regular basis, not every day. But I think the thing you need to do every day is set aside all the electronics, take that task list and put it aside and take 20 minutes to reflect and to be introspective. How did I show up today? Was I the kind of leader I wanted to be? How did I treat people? Was I true to my values, or did I get caught up in something else? Was I name dropping, or was I caught up in how much money I have, or was I trying to impress people? And think about that. If you do that for 20 minutes, you'll be a lot better leader. And then, so those two things are practices. That's how you gain self-awareness, because you can drift away, and people who have been good leaders can lose their way as they get more full of themselves and start to think they know everything.
Yeah. And do you think along the lines of serving others? I mean, I know that you talk about servant leadership some. Do you think that's been misinterpreted and widely used without a full understanding of what it means? Because it seems like there's really few true servant leaders.
Right. Robert Greenleaf, when he was with AT&T, he's the father of it. He's the author of it.
Mm-hmm.
He came to my class, I wasn't even class, outside seminar put together, and I invited him to come and talk about his new idea about servant leadership. But I really do. That's that flipping the switch and going from thinking it's all about you to realizing it's all about other people. And you have to do that to be a good leader, because as long as you think that people are helping you become successful, you're gonna at the end, you're gonna lose your way. You're gonna derail. So I think you've got to get that through your head, and then keep it coming back, because as you get more promotions, you start to think, oh wow, I'm doing pretty well here.
Yeah. And the first you talk about flipping the org chart upside down. The first time I saw that was a Nordstrom org chart 30 years ago, right? But it's such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? That when the CEO sits at the bottom of the organization, of the org chart, and the front line's at the top, and we all see ourselves below the front line as supporting those who sell and serve things, it changes a mindset, doesn't it? It's a visible way of looking at that, I would think, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had a lot of companies that have these big corporate staffs. They think their job is to control what everyone in the organization does. And I used to say to our people, no, your job is to make the front line, the engineers, the innovators, the creators, the researchers, the production workers, the people helping work on doctors and hospitals. Your job is to support them and give them. And that's a 180-degree switch around the way companies have done it. That's why we need the emerging leaders, the Gen Xers, baby boomers, Gen Z, to step up, not baby boomers, millennials, step up and take charge now, because they get that. And they're very much in tune with the needs of younger people and what their needs are and how you inspire them. And so you don't get into these things like the Great Resignation or quiet quitting because you don't understand your own people. So that's a key, I think, a key concept of everything I believe. Just think of it. Let me just go on a little bit further here. You go into any restaurant, any airline, okay, you rent a car, stay in a hotel, any service industry, you never see the CEO. You don't even see the manager, unless he's happened to be very active on the floor. The people you remember, the frontline people. It's that person helped you get the right pair of slacks, or the person that really cared about you to serve a meal and make sure you had a good time, or make sure you got a problem with your flight because you're going to be late. Okay, they're there to help you. That's who you remember. So what are we doing as leaders to motivate and empower the frontline people and to recognize them? They're the ones, and we, to pay them appropriately, but more to recognize their contributions.
Yeah, and so much of the modern corporation is about decentralized staffs that control the line in 1,000 different ways to manage costs, and it's sort of the opposite of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you empower people, you don't need more people, because people will step up and do things. You don't need more controllers checking the controllers. We got just too much staff when we created the large staff model. And the organization doing the best, the ones that have a small staff model, where people and the CEOs, I think we did a study, CEOs spent 3% of their time with customers. I spent 30% of my time with customers, another 30 with employees. Get out there and find out what's going on. Somebody else can review the numbers. I got them all on the computer anyway. I can check them at night, but get out and be with the people and find out what's going on, because big organizations, a lot of times people don't know what's going on. And this is a huge loss.
Yeah. By reputation, one of your superpowers, Bill, is that people talk about you and they say, one of the most curious questioners in the history of modern American management. Do you like that label or not?
Oh, I'm complimented by it, although I realize there's a downside even there, because I come into the classroom and I'm very challenging. And so, Gary, why do you say that? What are you basing it on? You know, what's your principle? You know, does that get a value of yours? Why are you saying this? And so some people that can shut them down. So I can't be too aggressive about that. But yeah, I only learn by asking. Look, I have no great knowledge, and this will surprise you. I've never had a job where I knew as much as the people who work for me. I can tell you, I came into every job I had to totally depend from the time I was 27 years old, general manager of the consumer microwave division for Litton. I had to depend totally on my subordinates. And that was came to Medtronic, knew nothing about medicine. I had to depend upon people that really knew about medicine and medical technology. So, but that creates a whole different mindset of the leader. So you have to ask a lot of questions. I'm now a passive leader that just sits back, okay, you know, looks at PowerPoint charts. I am challenging, for better or for worse.
Well, there's a difference though, right? Isn't there, between somebody who's genuinely curious and somebody's asking questions to ask questions for some other reason?
I'm curious about how things work. I've always been curious since I was a young person starting in business. I've always been curious. Tell me how things work. You know, I don't understand. How does this really work? I remember I worked for the Secretary of the Navy, and I was first time on an aircraft carrier. I was amazed. They were doing exercises to go to Vietnam, and they'd lost a plane that missed the hook the week before. There were 5,000 people on that ship, and planes up in the air coming in. The waves were 20 feet high. It was an amazing experience to watch 5,000 people work as a team. Okay, the captain's up on the deck, but that captain's totally dependent on the frontline people, who's getting those planes in, who's bringing them up, the people flying the plane. They can't catch the hook for them, but all that team working together. It was amazing to see that kind of teamwork. And that just kind of set my mindset of what really matters in an organization, of that it is how the front line. Look at the problem Starbucks having now. You know, Howard created that as the quintessential employee-based company, right? And all of a sudden they tried to automate things, and everything is, you know, you're distant from the people, and you broke the relationship between the barista and the customer that the whole place was based on. So he's got a real challenge now. You know, how do you bring that back? And of course, that's how you are unionizing. They think no one cares about it. If people know you care about them, they're not going to unionize. They don't want to unionize, but they'll unionize. You think you don't care about them, so I need to speak out for what I need.
I can't help but think some of the stuff about creating a more human organization is pretty obvious if we would ask the question. You've interviewed as many leaders as anybody in the world almost, especially like that. Do you think there's a dearth of curiosity among leadership at most levels? I mean, are people that you're meeting genuinely curious, or are they more on autopilot with doing what they did to get there?
Well, the good leaders are genuinely curious. They're out there all the time. They're out there working with people, trying to understand how things are going. And the good leaders are, And look, this is not an unbiased selection of the people I've interviewed for the book. We chose people that we thought were doing really interesting things, had interesting stories, but were really authentic people. And a lot of the people that have failed that I've studied, they're just sitting in their office looking at numbers. Remember Dick Fuld at Lehman? You know, he went bankrupt sitting there looking at the numbers because he wouldn't face reality. And so I think the good leaders today, but I think leadership is changing. I think a lot of leaders are far better today than they were in my time. I'm really very excited about the leadership. I'm not just talking about the CEOs. I'm talking about all the people who work for them. They're energized, they're excited, and there are a lot of great leaders out there now. But you know, our schools are not training leaders; they're training managers. Our business schools, and so we need to shift that to developing leaders. That's what I tried to do in the 19 years I've been at Harvard Business School. It's all about developing leaders.
If we're going to build the agile, adaptive organization we think in the future, we can't do it the way we're doing it.
Oh, and the people have to be adaptable. How do you get through? Right now, we have multiple intersecting crises. No one knows the answer of what's going to happen to Russia and Ukraine. What's going to happen with when's the recession coming? What about this high inflation? What do I do I can't fill jobs right now. I don't know anyone can get all the people they need right now. So what am I going to do about that? And you have these crises that are intersecting. you have to be adaptable. You have to change their plans. There's a woman that I interviewed for the book, Corey Berry, who's CEO of Best Buy. She's 44 years old. She's been CEO for 9 months, followed Hubert Joly, who did an incredible job. And she went the other way. She had to close out 1,000 stores, furlough 52,000 people, and made these rapid fire changes. And amazing, and then she got stores open again 2 months later, and they flourished under her leadership, and only because she was so adaptable, so flexible. She moved faster than just about anyone in retail.
And it provides good examples for us to look at, and your book is full of them. At Harvard, one of the things that I'm insanely jealous about for your last 20 years is you get to see the generational changes come with every class. And so people like to write about and think about the generational changes. What do you see as the major difference for young people coming through today versus those of 15 years ago, maybe?
I think the young people coming through and the newer CEOs, and we've had about 400 CEOs go through our new CEO program, 12 at a time. So these are quite intimate discussions you have, is they are genuinely concerned about people today. They are realize they're much more aware of the problems in the world and what they're dealing with. The old school is kind of keep your head down, do your job, run your business. Doesn't work today. You saw what happened to Bob Chapek at Disney. You can't just do that. You have to be out in the world, and you have to realize, what is the role of our company in society? I have a friend who's head of Union Pacific Railroad, a huge corporation. They have a role in moving the goods. They just settled the union agreement, but they have a role. And that's so important to realize, what's our contribution. I was talking to a person who runs the largest steel company in the world, ArcelorMittal, and he was telling me, a lot of people are talking about, let's purchase credits to get through, and so we're in net zero. Said, no, Bill, we're spending $10 billion to reduce the energy consumption in our steel mills. And in the end, it's going to have a huge payback. But right now, we got to spend the $10 billion, and we can use a heck of a lot less energy. So these people are really committed. He's another young one that's in his early 40s. So you see that, I think, in the older leaders, it was kind of like, just leave me alone, let me run my business, play golf, make a lot of money.
Not so much anymore. There's one thing I'm going to unabashedly keep in my book for as long as I'm still around, is your thought process of, you hear people say, what should I do? What should I do? And people say, follow your passion. But your idea, and used Warren as an example of it, Warren Buffett, where you say, it's not just your passion, but it's follow your passion where you have the talent to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant piece. I think it's worth reiterating that you wrote, because I kept circling it and going, you got to find something you're really interested in, that you have a high motor passion for, but also have a talent. I mean, I might have wanted to play in the NBA, but that was never going to happen,
I have a huge passion for soccer. I coached youth soccer for 12 years. Although the last 4 years I had to turn over a college coach, so these high school kids could get ready to play D1 and D3 soccer. But I'd love to be U.S. national team soccer, but I don't have the talent to do it. So I think that is right. But it all starts with knowing who you are. Until you know who you are, you're going to get your passions confused with, as I did, with what's your title, or how much am I getting paid compared to what you're getting paid, Gary? Or did I get a write-up in the paper? Why'd you get one? And you're going to get confused about those things. So you really have to know who you are and be grounded and say, I like who I am, and I don't need to be CEO of, JP Morgan. I feel good about what I'm doing.
And who I am is a lot of what we call values, right? Your true north, what you stand for.
Yeah, and I think true north is who you are. But it comes from, what are your beliefs? What are your values? What are the principles you lead by? And then when you put those things together, and then you say, where do you find fulfillment and satisfaction in your life? Right now, I always thought I've been a leader much of my life, but I can tell you today, I'm not leading any organizations. My only role is to help develop other leaders. And I get great joy. Somebody even criticized me once, saying, Bill, I think you take vicarious pleasure from the accomplishments of other people. I said, yeah, I sure do. So when I work with people in an organization, I see them flourish. I feel great. I don't take any credit, but it makes me feel good. So it's a question, where do you find joy in your life?
And there should be more joy, right? Because leadership is such an amazing responsibility, but it's also such an amazing gift to be able to create an environment where people can reach toward their potential. And you know, Bill, I must confess that you've done that for many of us by constantly reminding us that no matter what we're thinking or doing, that there is a sense of purpose, there is a true north for us, and we're better people when we know that, right?
And and you feel better about yourself, and you really are making, look at the contributions you're making to the world. So, I think these are the things that are really, at the end of the day, David Brooks wrote a brilliant book, and he asked the question, he contrasted what he called resume values and eulogy values. Do you need to see in your resume that you're a CEO of General Motors, or do you have eulogy values that, what are they going to say about you at your funeral? That you cared about other people, or that you just made a lot of money? I went to a boss that I really admired as a mentor of mine, the first CEO of Honeywell, and I worked for. And I tell you, no one even mentioned his title, his job, how much money he had. They only mentioned, hey, how he treated them. His grandkids and kids were talking about how he treated them. That's what they remember. People remember little things, you help an older person across the street, or it's crazy, these little things, you care about little things, and they come back, and people remember that. That kind of shapes how you're seen. And you can have all the publicity you want in the world, but it's not as powerful as that.
Yeah, I think there was the random acts of kindness that nobody sees are hugely powerful. 3 quick questions for you, Bill, that I'd like to ask you before you go. First is, 2 leaders, living or dead, that you most admire or most influenced your thinking.
Living or dead.
Living or dead.
Nelson Mandela. I'm talking about people alive in my lifetime that I've met. That's my criteria. Nelson Mandela is the one I really admire the most, because he went through this incredible crucible, and I went to Robben Island and I saw my grandson. Can you imagine what it's like to be in prison for 27 years for a crime you didn't commit? And the living one I really admire as a business leader, as I mentioned before, is Satya Nadella. Because here's a guy that transformed a giant corporation from a group of know-it-alls to learn-it-alls. And it was all of you talk about curiosity. Yeah, constantly asking. And he brought the concept of empathy. Now, where did he get that as a computer engineer? He got it from his son, Zane, who was born with cerebral palsy. And his son, Zane, sadly died this year at age 26. But he brought that into Microsoft. And he said, Gary, if you don't have empathy for your people, for those clients we're causing difficulty with our software problems, then you're not going to flourish here. And so, and he's really totally transformed a giant organization. I think it's now the 2nd most valuable company in the world, next to Apple.
And is that your term or his term? Know it all to learn it all.
Oh, I've heard it a lot. Yes, he used it, but yeah, that's his term. But
it's used a lot.
I do think he's transformed Microsoft. Now we have to constantly learn. We learn from our customers. We learn.
I think that term is amazing, because I think we do need more curiosity. What are you reading, Bill?
I'm reading a book called Younger Next Year. So when you get to be my age, you want to think young. And I've had the blessing of teaching and working with people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, some in their 50s, for the last 20 years. So I want to not just think young, but I want to stay young. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So a lot of exercise, good sleep, reduced stress, and good diet. But I'm thinking about all those things to stay young. So that's what I'm reading.
That's great. Last question, Bill. A Gen Z manager comes up to you like they do at the Harvard Business School, and they say, Bill, just one piece of advice, just one I can take with me that'll shorten my trail. Just one.
Gary, follow your heart. Do the thing you love to do, and then lead with your heart. If you do that, you'll have a great life, and you'll be a really good leader.
Boy, and lots of great relationships to be proud of as you get older. Bill, thank you for taking the time with us today. You have been an inspiration to us for a long time. And I think that those values that you remind us that we should think about should be something we should do monthly, weekly, quarterly.
Yeah.
And I think you've done that for me in my life, and I thank you for that. And I'd also like to thank the Washington Speakers Bureau for hosting this conversation with the preeminent thought leader of our time about values, and I thank them for their continued support. Thanks, Bill. Hope I see you
Thank
soon.
you. I'm honored to be on with you. Thank you, Gary.